right. So what is evidence-based practice? What do you guys think evidence-based practice is? When you hear that term, what do you think about it? Andrea.
Using empirical methods to provide intervention or help.
Okay, use an empirical method to write an intervention to help, right? What do you mean by empirical methods?
So empirical, that it's been tested, you know, using the scientific method, and it's validated and it's ethical, and, you know, it's shown to be effective.
Okay, great. Okay. So evidence-based, right, means empirical. It's been researched. It's shown to be effective, right? Excellent. Okay. What else is evidence-based practice to you guys? Maria.
Evidence-based is like normally it's been researched and shown and proven that it is effective. It's an effective way of teaching, or not even just teaching, but strategies that you use with students. So, and in practice is like something you're using it because it's been researched to shown progress.
Really
right?
good. So Maria, what you're doing is kind of splitting the hair a little bit more, right? And saying that it's not just empirical based research, right? But it's actual practice, right, that we're basing in that evidence. So we're actually doing the practice with it. And that is actually kind of the connection to it, right? So it takes it that one extra step, because when we do research on human beings, is that actually the scientific method? I mean, is it really? It's not, right? I see Andrea saying, no, absolutely not, right? It's not the same as if I'm taking 2 chemicals, right? Or 7 chemicals, or, you know, it's a very, you know, extensive process, right? To be, so for example, when they had to figure out what COVID was, right? They were able to actually find the little virus in there and stain it and whatever they did so they could see the little spikes on it. And if I knew how to work the microscope, I was going to say the magnifying glass, that was wrong. I knew how to work the microscope, right? And you all know how to work the microscope. We could all go in there. We could all be able to identify and say that is COVID, right? Same thing with, like, you know, if you had, like, you know, a virus or the cold, or if I wanted to know what H2O was, right? If I took 2 hydrogen molecules and, you know, or a hydrogen molecule and 2 oxygen molecules, and I put them together, right? I'm going to get water, right? And that is fact-based law, right? There's no way to get around it. So when you're doing a scientific method with scientific things such as rocks, right? I love rocks. This little thing right here is actually really old. It's like millions and millions, billions actually of years old. These things that you see in here, I don't know how well you can see them, but they're actually the one-celled organisms that was the goo that started everything, right? So this is a really cool rock to me, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's really cool. But a scientist would be able to look at this and recognize all of these cells, right? And say, okay, these are cells, these are organisms. And if you're a geologist, you would be able to look at this stone and remember what the name of it is, right? And then and everybody would know that. It's scientifically proven, right? It's evidence-based. But when you're dealing with little humans or even big humans, it's a very different thing, because kind of like what Maria said, you have to be able to figure out, how am I using these interventions with these people when they may or may not respond the way that they did inside of research, right? So I was just reading a research paper about relationships, right? Because the big thing that we're doing right now is all about, this research paper is called, can instructional and emotional support in a first grade classroom make a difference for children at risk in school failure? And what this particular research paper is talking about, why can't you see the paper, right? What it's kind of talking about is, what is the difference between like classroom process and the actual relationship that the teacher has? And does the teacher have a kind of a more of a negative relationship with this kid that's at risk? Then, you know, do they have a higher potential of continuing to be at risk in second grade versus a teacher that has, you know, kind of better attunement with the student? How does that student fare right after in the next year? And so it's really easy to say, yeah, you know, kids that have a better attunement with their teacher, that, you know, they're going to do better with it. But then some of the faults with that is that this is research based, right? And then we need practice based. So what does that actually look like in a classroom for a teacher to be able to get those emotions and be able to continue the relationship with that kid and have this positive relationship with the kid throughout the school year? Like, is it actually that, or is it other things, right? So when you think of evidence-based practice, a lot of times we think of like a cookie cutter approach, right? Where everybody has to stand up there and you have like, you know, I have my DBT skills for training manual, but so you look at this manual, right? And you say, okay, I have to stand up here and I have to do X, Y, Z, and then a B, C, A. And if I do this, then everybody's going to learn right and everything's going to be fine. But in the real world, it doesn't work that way, right? Because these are little humans that we're dealing with, and the little people have feelings and they have emotions and they are hungry and they're coming in and they're upset, or they're extremely happy, or they're bored, or they don't want to be there. Or I'm a person too, and I'm a human, and, you know, maybe I've got like a lot of stress that's kind of going on and it's an off day today. And so, you know, we kind of do the best that we can. So evidence-based practice, what I want you guys to get from this is that this term, evidence-based practice, really started in the medical field. And it has since been adopted by many fields like education and child welfare and mental health, criminal justice, social work, of course. The Institute of Medicine in 2001, they kind of define evidence-based practice as this integration between your best researched evidence, right, and the clinical expertise, and then kind of combine that with the patient values, right? And then you kind of get in this evidence-based practice. So it's more than just the research says this is what we have to do, right? It's what the research is saying based on my clinical expertise and based on what the kid needs, right? So in social work, most people really agree that evidence-based practice is this process that kind of involves creating this answerable question that's it's like based on the available evidence. So basically you're saying what happened, right? Like your hypothesis, right? You're trying to come up with like your hypothesis and kind of come up with like, why is this kid acting this way? What kind of things do I think is the reason why this kid is behaving in this way? And that's where we were talking about this week, right? About whether or not it's a choice behavior, right? Or is it a skills deficit? And looking at the hypothesis and kind of figuring that out, right, is going to tell us what kind of evidence-based practices should we work with this kid if this is a skills deficit versus if this is a choice behavior, right, that the kid is kind of doing. So what we end up doing with evidence-based process, right, is again, it's this process that involves creating this answerable question that is based on the client or its organizational needs. So you can kind of use this evidence-based practice in social work if you're doing organizational needs assessments as well, right? So you guys did your needs assessment class before and you kind of figured out, okay, what tier 1 interventions does the school need, right? So on that multi-tiered systems of support, which we'll talk about this week more, or the universal supports that everyone in the school could kind of put together to help the school be a better, safe environment. So if we have a lot of bullying at our school, what can the school kind of do that we could actually put into place to kind of reduce our bullying? And then when we do that, so if our goal then is to reduce bullying at the school, right, that's your organizational need, right? And then we also want to locate the best available evidence to answer that question. So that's where Andrea was kind of talking about looking at the research and kind of figuring out, okay, what kind of practices and stuff are out there. We want to evaluate the quality of the evidence, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing with this particular one here, where I'm saying, is instruction or classroom process going to matter with these kiddos? Is it a relationship thing or not? And what's the quality of the evidence that kind of shows that? Adam?
Oh, no, I just typed in that I kind of think of it as like a scouting report that you would use for sports, of kind of like finding out what the person is good at and like, how for sports you find out how to beat them. But in this point, you're trying to figure out how to make them better at their deficits.
Very good. Very good, Adam. That's like a really good way to think about it, and never thought about it before, but that's exactly what it is, right? You want to look at that kiddo and think, how can I increase, if I'm, baseball coach, how can I increase their batting average? How are they standing wrong? What are they kind of doing, right? But we're looking at it for the behavior. This perfect connection. And then the last part we want to make sure we're doing is that we're evaluating the effectiveness and the efficiency of this intervention, right? This is where we get kind of scared, because then we're thinking, oh my gosh, the effectiveness and efficiency, those are really big words. And how on earth do I do that? And I'm not a mathematician. That's why I became, in this field of social work, especially social workers, right? Special ed, you might do a little bit better in math because you are teachers, but social workers didn't become teachers because we don't do math, right? They can all tell you that. So it's like, if it gets kind of complicated, we don't want to do stats. So I'm going to show you how you can get evidence-based efficiency evidence, right? To show that what you're doing is working with simple math, adding, subtracting, right? Very simple kind of stuff. No crazy statistical stuff. Okay. So evidence-based practice, right, is, again, it's a process, right? So I don't want you guys to think about it as like a one kind of shop thing, but it's actually a process that helps you to make the right decision to best help that child or to best help that organization, okay? So when you're looking at this, what the practitioner wants to do is they want to combine the well-researched interventions with, again, their clinical experience, right, that they're kind of like working with, right? They want to combine that with the culture of not just the student, but the culture of the school too, right? So remember I said that school social workers work in a host setting, right? So you want to make sure that your evidence-based process, right, your evidence-based practice is good for the kid, but that it's also matching the culture of your school, right? So if I'm coming into my school and I'm saying, hey, I think we have a huge issue on bullying, and the culture at the school is, no, we don't, we have no issue in bullying, then I need to relook at what I think the problem is, right? Because they're saying, no, there's no problem with bullying at the school, but I'm seeing it as a problem. So it doesn't matter what kind of plan I come up with. If I don't have the buy-in, right, and understanding what's going on at the school, then it's not going to work. So the school may say, well, our culture here, right, is that, you know, we don't really do bullying, right? We don't call it bullying, right? We call it, I don't know, something else, right? So then okay, so the culture then, so you do have a bullying problem. You're just not calling it bullying. You guys are calling it this. So I need to call it that as well, right? And that's how you can kind of intervene it with the culture. If you have a kiddo where the parent is like, yeah, no, my kid does not curse at school. That's not something that my child does. That's not okay. We respect adults, right? We respect authority. And yet the kid is cursing at adults in the school, right? We need to figure out in the family culture, how do we word this differently so that we're meeting with the family and what the family is saying, so that way our decision is the right decision and we're making a plan that's actually going to fit within their culture as well. So it gets real complicated when you start bringing in all of these different aspects, because you want everybody kind of on the same page as to what is the right decision to help this student. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we want to make sure that we include our ethics, right, that are kind of in here. Now, social works have a really strong ethical process that we go through. Educators have ethics too, but educators look at what's in the best interest of the child, right? That's kind of like the motto for educators, is we want to do what's in the best interest of the child. And then they kind of bring in different theories of like systems of care, or they bring in like ethics of the justice, right? What's fair for everybody. They kind of look at like ethics of critique, right? They want to like kind of critique the laws and the rules and see, you know, is that actually working, right? And then their ethics of their profession that kind of comes in, which is a little different than the way social workers do it, because social workers are like, okay, we want to start where the client is, right? We want to do what's in the best interest for the client. Well, it's kind of the same thing, right? They're doing what's best for the student, right? But schools also look at the whole system. So they're saying, okay, what's best for the student, but I can't do what's best for the student at the sacrifice of other students, of other staff. Where social workers might say, okay, let's start where the client is, and how can we best start where the client is? And you remember last week we talked about, but who's our client? So it's really hard to kind of figure out who the client is and start where the client is. So we have to make sure that we take our ethics and the school's ethics and we understand the two of them and kind of like bring those into what we're kind of doing when we're working at evidence-based. Because again, it's not this cookie cutter approach, right? It's very unique for each child, and very unique for each teacher, very unique for each family, right? And for the school, right, as to what they're doing. Then we're going to look at the client preferences, right? So again, this is social work, start where the client is. What does the kid kind of want to see happen? If you're doing this and you're doing evidence-based practice and you're doing it like with a teacher, and the teacher's having a really hard time connecting with this student, the student just pushes them the wrong way, right? What is that teacher's preference? Like, what does that teacher actually want to kind of have happen? What do they want to see the kid kind of doing? So you'll have to do your assessment and look at the teacher, see what they want to have happen. What does the kid actually want to have happen? And then figure out a way to get those two to kind of meet together. Do we want to look at our own clinical experience, right? Am I good enough to do this? Do I know the different things that I have to have out there to be able to do this? And a lot of times we're going to be standing and going, I don't have a flipping clue how to do this, right? And that's the beautiful part about working in a school, is because there's a lot of people out there that know what they want to do, but have no clue how to do it. That's why we work in teams, right, on the school system. And so that's where you go in with the team and you go, you know what, I kind of see that this is the issue. And the kid is doing this, and the teacher is saying, you know, that when they do this, it's really driving them crazy. And the teacher has tried X, Y, and Z to get the kid to stop, and the kid is not stopping. Parent is kind of, you know, in the back saying, you know, it's up to the school to figure out, you know, what to do with this kiddo. So help me, because I need help. I'm not sure where to kind of go with this, right? And then you guys work together as a team to try to come up with some ways to figure out what to do, right? If you don't know, and sometimes we don't. And then you want to make sure that yours is kind of like what Andrea said and Maria said, right? You want to make sure that your interventions are well researched. So we don't just want to pull pie out of the sky, right? And go, well, you know what? The kid is, you know, not doing what he's supposed to be doing. So I don't know, let's try, you know, attaching, you know, balloons to his feet and see if that helps him walk better down the hallway, right? That's not evidence-based, right? That's just kind of like, no, that's kind of crazy, right? We're not going to do that. And then all of this becomes like the system, right, that you end up kind of like working into. And so that's where the process of evidence-based practice kind of comes into, right? Because it's this whole process and it kind of like continues. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you guys how it works in like kind of like a 4-stage model, but this is like the framework or the foundation, the scaffolding, if you want to say, for evidence-based practice. So my husband's just walking in the front door now, so you may hear some noise or whatever, but hopefully he hears me talking and he's going to be quiet. So we're good. Okay. Any questions on this slide so far? No? Okay. So there's a lot there that I kind of threw out to you guys, right, to kind of like work with or whatever. So the main takeaway I really want you guys to get from this is that it's not a cookie cutter approach, right? Every kiddo is going to be different. It's all going to be separate, because evidence-based practice kind of got that bad rap under it, right? That it's that way, and it's not. Okay. So evidence-based practice kind of has this 4-step process, right, that we're going to kind of talk about. And it kind of makes sense, right? So step 1 is we just want to define what the problem is, right? What's our problem or what's our goal? So we need to be able to define that. And I'm going to show you guys some ways that we can define that through different assessments, screeners, classroom observations, different things like that we'll talk about throughout the class. But it's going to be something that you really want to just kind of like define what's our problem, what's our goal. Our next step then is we want to start analyzing that problem. So you're going to use data to determine why the issue is occurring. So the data may be classroom observations, it may be screeners that we're doing, it may be interviews that we're doing with the kids or with the parent or with the teacher. But you got to like analyze the problem, right? And kind of figure out like what's going on. You talk to the kid. I think a lot of times we do things to the kids. And this is where I think it gets a little bit different between like a behavioral plan and when we talk about the plan of care later, right? So behavioral plan is kind of, we go out and we do this functional behavioral assessment, which is awesome, kind of identifies the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence, right, of like what's going on. And then as adults, we sit back and we say, okay, we want the kid to do this. So how do we adjust the consequence or the antecedent or disrupt that behavior somehow to teach them a new skill so that they stop doing that behavior, right? And that is perfectly fine. And that's what we do all the time in like special ed or for like autism, that kind of stuff. With this, it's a little bit deeper than that, because with this one, when we're analyzing the problem, we want to make sure that we talk to the kid too and find out, okay, why are you doing this? Like, why are you behaving this way? What's kind of happening with this? What do you need to help you to change this, right? What kind of things do you need? And a lot of times when we talk to kids, you just get this, I don't know, right? And so I'm going to show you a way that we can talk with them to try to get a little bit deeper out of them as to what's going on. Because once we get them kind of like involved with it, they have to be involved in their process to kind of change their behaviors and stuff. The next step that we do is we're going to develop and implement the plan, right? So the plan is driven by establishing kind of performance goals. I didn't put a plan of care in this, but I should have. But performance goals on the SPED side, right, they're going to understand, they have their goals, their benchmarks, right, their objectives. So we kind of do the same type of thing in this side, but we do it underneath what is called CASEL. Are you guys familiar with CASEL? No? Okay, so we do it with what is called CASEL, and what CASEL is, I didn't put that slide in here. So hold on, give me 2 seconds here, and I'm going to pull it up for you because I want you guys to see it. So CASEL has to do with social emotional learning. And what CASEL is they are the go-to person or company or whatever that has to work with them. And they have this beautiful thing here called the CASEL wheel. So let me pull this up here and let me see if I put it here, if you guys can see it. Okay, so you guys cannot see it. So how do I get you guys to see that? How do I make you see this? Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. Let me stop presenting and I'm going to pull up this CASEL wheel here. Okay, so now let me get you guys to see this tab. CASEL wheel. Okay, so what you end up doing with the CASEL wheel, right, is in social work, this is where your evidence-based practice is going to be grounded in. So pretty much everything that you're going to be doing is going to have to do with the CASEL wheel and what's going on with them. So CASEL is social and emotional learning, SEL competencies, right, is CASEL. You see it up here. So you can go to CASEL.com, or I think it's .org, but if you Google CASEL, you'll see this. It comes up, has all kinds of amazing things that are going on with it. This was in 2007, right, when they started with this one. So CASEL is where the school district, not just the school district, but the state of Nevada itself has said this is our primary core of social emotional learning. So as social workers, when we're working with our kiddos, we're really working in that social emotional learning aspect. And we want to increase the social emotional learning in our evidence-based practice. So that way we increase the academic success of the students. So we always tie it back into the academic success of the students because we are in a host setting, which is the school, and the school wants to know how or what you're going to do. How is that going to increase their academic success? And so CASEL wheel is one of the ways we do that. So when we're looking at step 3, and we're developing and implementing our plan, what we're going to do is, you notice that this has social emotional learning here in the middle. We have self-awareness, self-management. They're both orange because they kind of go together. Usually if you've got high self-awareness, you've got pretty good self-management, right? And vice versa. We also look at social awareness and relationship skills, and they're both green because they kind of go together. Because if I have low social awareness, I'm not going to have a whole really good relationship skills, right? And then responsible decision-making is over here on its own because I'm not making very good choices for things that are, kind of going on. So you'll see down here that it has that in the classroom, right? This is a systems theory, the way that it's kind of coming out here, right? So you have your classroom area. So it's what's your SEL curriculum and instruction inside the classroom. And then at your schools, what is your school-wide practices and policies for social emotional learning? And then within home and the community, what does the family, community, and partnerships do for social emotional learning? So what's really nice is that once you get used to kind of talking in CASEL and talking in this way, you can tell parents, you know what, Johnny really needs some self-awareness, right? Because he's being really impulsive. And so he's kind of cursing at the teachers. And so the relationship skills are not quite there. Like at home, you have done a great job teaching Johnny to respect adults and to not curse. And at home, he is absolutely doing that. But at school, outside of you, he's having a much harder time with that self-awareness, understanding that that's what he needs to do, and then being able to connect that with the relationship skills that he has to have with his teachers and other adult authorities, that he doesn't curse at them. Does that make more sense to say that to mom if mom is like, no, man, Johnny doesn't curse. He knows to respect adults. This is what he's doing, right? So I can explain it to her in such a way that it's more culturally neutral, right? So that they're understanding kind of, what's going on and what it is that we're trying to work with your kiddo at school. And then she's also understanding, you know what, I bet there's other things that Johnny needs help with self-awareness at. Like, what kind of things do you think he's just not quite self-aware? Is he kind of impulsive with things? Does he do, these different types of things or whatever? And mom will probably go, yeah, actually he does. And yeah, his relationship with his brother, he's terrible at that. Like he's always fighting with his brother. Oh, so you know what? Let's see if we can build some relationship skills at home as well, right? And then you can connect it. So what's nice about this is on the second page of this, it explains what it is. So self-awareness is the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence their behavior. And then the ability to accurately ascertain one's strengths and limitations with a well-grounded sense of competence, optimism, and a self-growth mindset. And then it kind of shows you in here what type of things would we want to work on if we were going to work on this self-awareness. Right? So let me see if I can get this just a little bit bigger for you guys, because I don't know if you can see it real good on the screen there. Okay, is that better? You see a little bit better now? Yeah. Okay. So under self-awareness, right, we might help him to identify emotions. So with little Johnny, he may curse out the teacher because he's angry, upset, or he's shy, embarrassed, right? And so I need to grab control back because I'm going to, so I can't, identify my emotions, right? I'm having difficulty with that. He may have accurate with his self-perception, right? So he may think, oh, at home, mom and dad's in control, but at school, you're not my mom, so I don't have to listen to you. Right. So he's got that self-perception. He's kind of self-inflating himself, right? He's thinking, that it's not, or I'm just trash and everybody's talking about me and, why are you looking at me kind of thing, right? Could be another example of it. Recognizing his own strengths, we could build on his self-confidence or build on his self-efficiency, right? So when you're doing step 3 and you're kind of building the plan, you're looking at this castle, you're looking at little Johnny and you're saying, okay, what are some things in here that we can help him to build up, right? And then the other one that I targeted on here was the relationship skills. So his relationship skills is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups, the ability to communicate clearly, listen well, cooperate with others, resist inappropriate social pressures, negotiate conflict constructively, and seek other help when needed. So does it sound like Johnny, right? If he's cursing out the teachers because he's getting upset, right? So we need some help with his relationship skills. So we might help him with communication, help him with social engagement, help him with relationship building and teamwork, right? So we're going to talk with Johnny and say, hey, it seems like you're really having a hard time with da-da-da-da, right? So it's really nice because you're able to look at all of these things and kind of figure out decision making. Now, Johnny can obviously be in any of these categories, but you just kind of look for the top 2 categories that your assessment is kind of saying, I think these are the top 2 places where we want to start. And then you double check that. You ask Johnny, you ask the teacher, you ask mom. This is kind of where I'm thinking, what do you think? Where should we start, right? That's part of your team, right? And kind of figure out what's going on with him. Does that make sense on how to develop and implement your plan? Yes? Okay. All right, so let me stop presenting that one. Put this one away. Let's get back up the other one here. Okay, so we were at step 3, right? Develop and implement a plan. So you would use CASTLE to kind of do that, right? To work on that. Okay, and then the next step is going to be to measure your response to the intervention, right? So you want to use data to gather from this process to monitor this kid in progress monitoring. So they call it progress monitoring in special ed, and special ed has for FBA, right, functional behavioral assessment or analysis, they have very set kind of ways that they do this. So this isn't something that we're kind of reinventing, right? We can use some of the same things that they've been using the whole time to do our progress monitoring as well. But there's also some special ways that social workers can do it that don't quite look like what maybe the special education teacher is doing or the school psych is doing. But the school psych, when they see the data, they're going to be like, wow, that's actually really great stuff. And I'll show you what that'll look like. Any questions on the 4 steps for evidence-based practice? You guys are being really quiet tonight. So either I'm boring you to death or you guys got this down pat. One of the 2 is happening here. I hope that you guys got this down pat. What I want to make sure you guys get out of this is just that you're not scared when someone tells you, is that an evidence-based practice or not? And you'll be able to say, yeah, because I'm using CASTLE. I gathered data. I did my assessment, identified the problem, right? If I did those 4 steps, then what I'm doing is evidence-based practice, right? And so then you can very easily say yes and tell them why. And they'll be like, oh my God, she knows her stuff. That's so cool. All right. So I've been talking a lot about MTSS, right? So this is just kind of a brief overview. I'm going to go over this more in depth in the classes up to come. But basically, when you're looking at, these are just kind of menus of evidence-based support kind of practices, right, that you could do at the different levels of the school. So remember, we have tier 1, which is this green area. Those are the universal supports. So this is between 75. This is 75 and 90% of students will respond to this. That's kind of high. I've never heard 90%. Usually it's about 80-ish%, but that's okay. A large portion of the school is going to respond to your universal. So these are going to be your school-wide PBIS supports, right? Oh, here, good. Okay. So I was going to say, how come you can't see it? I'm pointing to it and you can't see it. So universal screeners, right? These are going to be more of your positive behavioral instructional supports, PBIS. This could be your social emotional curriculum, something that's based inside of CASTLE. This could be 17 proactive classroom management techniques, right? physiology for learning, diet, exercise, sleep, hygiene, stress management. So these are the types of things that as a social worker, you could bring kind of into the school on like a tier 1 level and say, hey, you know what, these are going to help with positive relationships for all students, progressive responses to problem behavior, right? So behaviors that we're having at the school, here's some ideas of some things we might be able to do at a tier 1 level to kind of increase, and help the kids along. Then you have this yellow here is your tier 2, right? So for your tier 2, these are your at-risk students. These would be classroom and small group strategies. So classroom, you could be doing like a classroom push-in and actually going into the classroom and kind of teaching this, or you could pull kids out and do like a small group with them and teach it with them as well. And out of the kids that end up in a tier 2, about 10 to 25% will respond to a tier 2 intervention, right? And these can go up and down like this constantly, right? So the kid can start at tier 3 and they can get them all at the same time. So it's not like you stop tier 1 interventions when you start tier 2, right? And you don't stop tier 2 interventions when you start tier 3 interventions. It's a continuum that the kid goes kind of up and down with, right? And then these are some examples of some of the things that you might do with a kiddo for a small group intervention that are all evidence-based that you can put into your evidence-based practice for the kiddo. And then tier 3 are going to be like your 3 to 5%. I usually say 1 to 3% of the kids at the school, which can still be quite a bit of kids, right? If you think about a kid that's, at high end, this is your only job, you're going to be busy. These are more targeted for your high-risk kiddos. So kind of your kiddos that you did tier 2 interventions on and they're not really responding. This is where you're going to do more of that FBA-based behavior intervention plan. You're going to do the replacement behavior training, cognitive behavioral counseling or therapy, family therapy, wraparound services, outside agencies, that kind of stuff, right? So as a social work perspective, this is kind of like, it's not an all-inclusive menu, but this would be kind of like a menu of things that you can use to kind of work with evidence-based practice in a multi-tier systems of support. So what's really cool is Nevada and Clark County as a whole has really embraced now the MTSS model, right? So the multi-tiered systems of support model. So prior to just the last couple school years, when you would look at an MTSS model, it was always on the academic side, right? Everybody was always looking at the academics, and behaviors really took a back seat. And this week, I'll start talking more about why that kind of happened with No Child Left Behind and why we're kind of reversing that No Child Left Behind, zero tolerance laws and different things that kind of happened that kind of created everyone to really look more on the academic sides and think that behaviors don't really matter, that as long as you have a good teacher inside the classroom, it doesn't matter what their behavior is, the kid's going to learn, right? We're kind of learning after 20 years of No Child Left Behind that that's a bunch of BS and that kids are not robots that just walk in ready to learn, and that there's a lot of behavior that kind of happens with them. And so now what's happening with Clark County School District, you guys are going to see this school year, they're really combining this as a whole triangle. And they're saying academic and behavior are not separate, right? They are together and they are equal. Right. And so what's really cool is that you're going to start seeing that more. So I just want to kind of show this because usually it's not shown in this way. But these are, if you notice, this has the evidence-based practice right inside of it. Because when you're doing evidence-based practice, it's working on the academic side and it's also working on the behavioral side. Right. And this just kind of shows like how it works with. Any questions on those two charts? Okay. Moving on. All right, so when we do evidence-based practice, right, how do social workers show evidence-based practice? So we do what we call bag the students, right? So we look at their behaviors, we're looking at their attendance, and we're looking at their grades. So when I look at their behaviors, I'm not just looking at necessarily like how many RPCs did they have, required parent conference, or how many suspensions did they have, or how many in-house suspensions do they have, or how many times do they get sent to the office. It's definitely an easy measure for me to measure and then see whether or not the interventions I'm doing, is it decreasing that, right? But we also want to look at, those are more externalizing type behaviors. We also want to look at internalizing type behaviors. Is the kid participating in the classroom? Are they motivated when they're inside the classroom? Do they have their head down? Are they turtling, right? Are they putting, their thing up or whatever? They're not willing to talk. Like what kind of things are kind of happening with them? With their attendance, again, we want to see, is the kid in class? Do they kind of have a history of not showing up for class? Are they tardy quite a bit? Are they in class, but they're not doing a dang thing, right? Think about that kiddo that sits inside your class day in and day out, 5 days a week, 6 hours a day and does nothing. Like that's, wow. Talk about some like major strengths, right? That kid has, that they can sit there and be that bored and do absolutely nothing. There's no way. I would make it maybe half an hour. I don't even think I'd make it that long. I'd make it 10, 15 minutes before I was doing something. And then I would engage with the class, right? Because I'd be bored. Megan.
It's so funny you mentioned that because at CIS we had something similar, but we called it the ABCs. So A would be academics, B would be behavior, and C would be A would be attendance, and then C would be course performance. So it's
Instead of grades.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's really
Okay.
cool. Yeah, because then you can kind of see, and it lets you like identify, like, oh, okay, they need help here, they need help here. Here's where I can start, and then it kind of helps you dig in more. So that's a good baseline.
Excellent. Yep, that's exactly what we use it for, right? Is that baseline. And I call it bags because of the grades, right? So, but grades, when we're looking at grades, course is actually kind of a good one too, because when you're looking at like the curriculum, right, and how are they kind of doing? Because when we're looking at grades, we want to look at, are they turning in their work, right? Why are they getting that F, right? If they're getting the F, why? Like, it's not just the fact that they have an F, but we want to dig deeper in there and figure out why is that happening, right? Like, I think I told you guys a story about the little kiddo that kept running out of the class, right? And was like constantly eloping from the classroom. So his behavior was that eloping. His attendance was non-existence for that class because he was eloping all the time, right? So we were having trouble with that. And his grade in his ELA, right, and especially in his phonetics, was really, really low because this kid didn't want to read out loud and was really having a hard time with it, right? So when we looked at the bag on there and we bagged this kid, we could see, wow, all of this is kind of connected to this one particular class. So how can we change one of these things that are affecting him and see all things kind of come up, right? So I kind of created this little sheet here that I kind of use to just kind of do their behavior, attendance, and grades, right? And so what I do on this one right here is you just put the student name and number, the date that you reviewed them, and the name of the reviewer. At intake, what was their in-house, what was their RPC, what was their suspensions? Kind of left this blank down here so you could say students eloping from the class and the number of time, right, that they're like eloping from the class, right? Or because that's kind of like their behavior, right? Or the kid is, you know, cursing out the teacher and the teacher has sent them to the office, you know, X amount of times. Or I actually had a kiddo that was completely pushed out of his classroom. It was at an elementary school, and his desk was now a permanent fixture in the hallway where you would come into the hallway and like there was another hallway kind of that came down here. So when he came out of the office hallway, he couldn't really get to the outside door because there was a door here and the principal's office and the AP was right down this hallway. Bathroom was off of here. And this was this kid's desk. And so I remember the first day I came by and he was sitting there and he was like, you know, just kind of bored to death, kind of doodling on his paper. And I didn't say anything to him because I thought, you know, maybe he's just, you know, in a timeout or something, right? They're just, you know, or he's waiting for his mom to pick him up. Maybe he's sick. I don't know. Next day I came through there and I think I went to go see the principal and the kiddo's still sitting there. The next day he's still sitting there. So finally I started kind of talking to the kid and I'm like, hey, why are you sitting here? Well, this is where I have to be now. My teacher said this is where I have to be. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I didn't think of nothing. Well, the week went by and the next week he's still sitting there. So now I see his teacher there and his teacher's kind of teaching him, you know, what are you doing? You got to do this, you got to do that, blah, 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 blah. And the kid's just sitting here like this. So finally I asked the principal, why is this kid sitting in the hallway? Like, what is going on? Well, this kid was a nightmare for his teacher. And in the teacher's union contract, it says that if you have a kid that is like physically attacking you or physically attacking other people in the classroom, you don't have to allow them inside your classroom. Right? You can provide them with an alternative setting for their education, especially if they're general ed. Now, sped kid, you couldn't do this, right? But a general ed kid, you can pretty much do anything with them, and they don't have the same rights necessarily as a sped kid has. And I'll explain that next week. So finally, I was like, well, can I work with this kid and with the teacher, the parents, see if we can get this kid back in the classroom? The principal's like, please do, because I can't. I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. So I went in and talked with the teacher. And what do you think the first question is that I asked the teacher?
About their behavior, attendance, and grades.
So yeah, so sort of like that, right? But actually the very first question I asked the teacher was, remember I always say start where the client is, right? So the first question I asked the teacher was, what do you think?
What do you need?
Yeah, what do you want this kid back in your class? Like the kid sitting in the hallway, is that your goal? Is that where you want him to be for the remaining? Because if the teacher said, yes, that's my goal, what could I have done? Probably nothing, right? Because the teacher's not even willing to work with me to help him to get the kid back in the classroom, right? But I've never met a teacher that says that because that's not why they're there, right? They don't want the kid sitting in the hallway. They really want the kid in their classroom, engaged and learning and part of their classroom family, right? And this teacher was a great teacher. And he was like, yeah, if you can help me get this kid back in the classroom, that'd be awesome. So I'm like, what does the kid do? What is his behavior? What is his attendance? What is his grades? And boy, did I get an earful, right? So then the next step I did was I said, okay, let me go ahead and kind of like, talk to mom, right? Talk to, see what's going on there. Mom was pissed at the teacher, hated the teacher. Kid was like, oh yeah, I want to be inside the classroom, right? So working with the kid and with the teacher and the parent and setting up kind of like this, starting with the bag and just kind of going from there, within about 3 weeks or so, we were able to get the kid back into the classroom, and he remained in the classroom for the remainder of the school year, right? He wasn't the ideal perfect kid, but he wasn't doing all the crap he was doing beforehand, right? And now he's getting his education. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody. But you'll see that sometimes because teachers are just like, oh my God, I'm done. So I always start where the client is. And the teacher in this case was very much the client, just like the kiddo, because the teacher's like, I'm at my wit's end. I can't have him in the classroom. I'd rather come here and teach him and then go back to my classroom all the time. And that's what he kept doing. Crazy. All right. So then another thing that we can give to them is what's called the youth internalizing screener, right? So we have different types of screeners that we can give the kids. We also have a DAS, which I didn't put the example of in this PowerPoint, but I can put it on the website or on Canvas so you guys can see it. So the youth internalizing screener measures the actual internalizing thoughts and patterns of the student, right? So let me show you. So with this one, right, as you're working with the kid, it's called a youth internalizing screener. This is a research-based best practice, and it is so easy to score. So you basically just kind of go through, and what I normally do is I don't ask these questions flat out, right? I would ask a question like, I might say, so Jennifer, when you're in your classroom, do you ever kind of feel nervous or, afraid, or when you're coming to school or anytime throughout the day, do you ever feel kind of nervous or afraid? Right? And then Jennifer would answer me and I would say, okay, about how often do you feel that? Is that like, pretty much never? Is that just on some days? Is that, more days out of the week? Is that like every single day, right, that you're coming in? And then based on how she answers, right, I'll score it 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? And kind of go through these 10 questions real fast. So I feel, very tired and drained of energy. So you know what, Jill, it looks like you're really tired, right? You're kind of sitting in the back there. You got your head kind of down. You're just kind of quiet there. Are you really tired? Just kind of, feel like you got no energy? Like, what's going on? Yeah, actually I do. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, is that something that happens to you all the time or, just some of the time or, more days out of the week than not, like, right? And you just kind of go through this with a conversation and ask the kiddos. Yes, Jennifer.
So for these, do they have, are they made for different ages or do you just adjust your terminology?
I adjust my terminology. These are supposed to be K through 12, right? But I mean, some of this is going to be hard for the littles to understand, right? So littles, guys, is a school terminology that we use for like kindergarten, first, second graders, right? We call them the littles, right? When they're in elementary school. So the littles are going to have a hard time with this, right? To kind of, get this or whatever. Or you may have a kid that's autistic or a kid that has a learning disability that kind of causes them to not understand some of these words, right? Which is why I don't just hand them the assessment and have them do it and circle a number. I go through it and just kind of ask them. Right. And just kind of figure out like, what are they doing or whatever. So do you got things that are bothering you more, stuff really, bugging you, lately or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you can tell them, hey, I've got some questions here. I'm just going to ask you. It's going to feel kind of weird. Some of these questions, there's 10 of them. I just need you to give me, there's no right or wrong answer. And just tell me, how you're doing. Right. So this can give you like a pretty nice baseline of where the kid is at. And then what you do is you just add these up. There's no reverse scoring or anything like that. And the higher the score, right, then the higher they have it having some internalizing, feelings, right, and problems that are kind of going on more internal than external, right? So this right here makes for like a really nice thing. Another screener that we use is the youth externalizing screener, right? The YIPS and the YAPS, right? So we have the YIPS and the YAPS. So in the YAPS, it looks exactly like the other one, except this one has to do with externalizing problems. And you're just going to say, so I lose my temper and get angry with people. So if you lose your temper and get angry with people, it seems like, you kind of lose your temper and get angry with people a lot because the teachers told me this, right? How often does that happen? Like, does that never happen? Sometimes, often, always? And if the kid says it never happens, I never lose my temper. Why are you asking me that, right? It also tells us that this kid on the CASA wheel doesn't have good self-awareness, right? So I may want to bring that up to this kid and get them to understand that there are other emotions that you're having, and you're saying that you're not angry, yet you're screaming at people, right? And you're in their faces and you're doing some type of thing. So is that like an impulsivity type of thing? Do you just like fighting and arguing with people? So you're not angry, right? This one right here, right? He says, no, I'm not angry. I don't lose my temper. That's never. but you seem to like to fight and argue with people. Oh yeah, I fight and argue with people all the time. That's a 4. Right? So it kind of gets you into, what's going on with him, right? What about, it seems like you have a hard time sitting still. Do you have a problem sitting still in the classroom? Or are you okay to, kind of sit? What about at home? Blah, blah, blah. How often is that, right? So you just kind of go through them and ask them. Do you just like annoying people and making them upset? So it's not that you're angry, right? It's that you love to argue and fight with people and you really like annoying people and making them upset. Yep, that's me. Do you see how just going through that just kind of helped me to target in a little bit more on this kid and what this kid is actually needing, right, on the CASA wheel? Does that make sense? So I'm going to look at this kid and I'm going to be like, okay, why does this kid just want to annoy and upset everybody, right? He's fighting and arguing with people. People see him as angry, but he's telling me he's not angry. So is he not understanding the anger, or is he's just being a jerk, right? He's just kind of being like a little bully. He's purposely out there teasing people. So maybe he needs some relationship skills here, right? Maybe part of the problem is he doesn't know how to make friends, right? He's kind of being more impulsive and out there. Jill?
So are these surveys, Professor Hernandez, are these things that you would also give? Obviously, this one is for the child, but like when the psychologist does a complete evaluation for like special ed services, maybe I would fill out one, a parent would fill out one, the student would fill out one. Do you give surveys to different parties? Is this one just goes to the kid, or does this exact one go to the teacher also to compare them?
So Jill, I love what you're thinking, because that's like our next step. So we also have, the other one that I don't have on here is the DAS 21. The DAS stands for depression, anxiety, and stress, which is actually really good for like kids coming back right now with COVID. And it kind of shows like where they're at. And that one goes again, like to the kid. Now, if you got littles, they may not understand the DAS or that stuff. So you may want to give that more to a parent. These right here are actually made to give to the kiddo themselves, right? But then I also have the other thing that we would do is the social, academic, and emotional behavioral risk screener, or the SABRS. And this is the one that you would give to the teacher. Okay. And what I did when all of these are research-based, all of these are evidence-based, all these are best practice, high fidelity, all of that good stuff. I was trying to find ones that are quick, that are easy that you can use, and that, teachers can use them and it's not going to take them long at all to fill out, but that kind of show like what's going on. So this one right here is the SABRS, right? So when you look at the SABRS, the teacher is going to look at this and they're going to say for the previous month, right? How is it that this kid is doing? Never, sometimes. This is one says other, and this is an actual official form. So I should say often and always. I keep meaning to go into Adobe and fix that, and I keep forgetting. So you would ask on social behavior, how often is this kid arguing? Cooperation with peers, temper outbursts. Academic behavior, right? Where's their distractedness? Where are they going? Where's their emotional behavior, sadness, and worry? You can see how quick this is. So your teachers will fill it out for you, right? Bring it to them. Because if you just stick it in their box, guys, the teacher's going to be like, oh my God, I don't have time for this one more paper, right? But you're different because you're not just sticking it in the box. You're engaging with the teacher. You're doing classroom observations. You're asking the teacher about the kiddo. You sent the kid to me, teacher, and asked me for help. So I need to get a little more information to kind of assess the problem. And this is where we're kind of looking at it, right? And then it has like how to screen it down here. So I have the actual screener of how to score it. And I'll show it to you because some of these are, well, none of these are reverse scored. They're all the same way. So you just kind of add them all up, and then you're going to say how were they at screening, diagnostic, and progressing. But I do have a second page to this that like explains more. This is the copy that you would give to the teacher. So I'll put the actual one on our Canvas so you guys can have it. Does that answer your question, Jill? Or Jennifer, who asked me that?
Yeah, and I was going to ask, is all this, because I was looking on Canvas also, is that slide net going to be available on there? Because there was a lot of good social emotional learning things on there.
Yes, I'm putting all of that on there. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, you'll get all of that on there. It'll be on there. So yeah, so that's how we kind of work with so basically for your evidence-based practice on this part of it, it didn't go along with the parent as well. The parent, you would do like a needs assessment and kind of, work on from there. School psychs, they're looking at kids because they're trying to see, is there a educational eligibility that this student qualifies for that we can give them an IEP, right? An individual education plan. Social workers are looking at this and we're trying to say, okay, what is it that we're doing that is actually going to help this kiddo to improve their behaviors? And I want to stop them, if I can, from going into special ed, right? If they are in special ed, then how can I do the best to support them by actually starting where the client is and kind of figuring out where things are at, right? So that's the SABRS. So one of the ways that we do that is through what's called the student brief assessment interview, right? So let me see here if I can get this one. So I have it up here, but I need to, uh-oh, I lost you guys. All right, there you are. Let me stop sharing this screen, and I will share the other one. Where's my stop sharing? Right here, stop presenting. There we go. I'm looking for stop sharing and it was stop presenting. It's funny how your brain gets into one thing and then you can't seem to think about anything else because it wasn't seeing what I wanted. So, all right, so we're gonna share this one or whatever with you. Wait. Okay. So this one right here that I'm sharing with you guys now, this is a student, it's a brief strengths-based assessment interview, right, that we're kind of working with. This is a fillable form that if you like download it, you can fill it in. So basically you start with the student's name, again, interview, referring teacher, and the date. You're going to start, this is strengths-based, right? So in social work, we really want to build on the student's strengths and find out what's going on, right? So is it a skills deficit or a choice behavior? Doesn't much matter to a social worker. I want to find out what are your strengths, what is it that you do well, and then how can we start building on those strengths to get other things in there to help you do better. So you're going to start off with a very positive kind of a question. You let the kid know, we're going to meet today to find ways to, you know, change schools so that you like it more. You can word this however you want it with whatever's kind of going on with the kid. We're going to talk for about 30 minutes or so. I can best help you if you're honest, right? You're not going to get in trouble. Nobody else is going to hear, you know, any of the stuff that you kind of talk about with me today. And then you kind of tell them, you know, unless you're hurting yourself, you know, you're thinking about hurting someone else or someone is hurting you, or you give me permission to share it, right? Otherwise, this is just kind of staying between us, right, as to what's going on. So then you want to have like kind of a positive first question. So you might have talked to the teacher or to the parent first. And so you know, hey, you know what? This kid really likes baseball. So you can say, you know what? I hear that you really like baseball. What is it about baseball that you really like? Tell me what's so cool about it, right? And then the kid can start telling you like what they're going on and say, oh my God, that's like absolutely amazing. So I want to kind of go over like you love baseball and you're really good at baseball. What other things do you do really well, right? If you think about school, what are kind of some things at school that you might do well in, right? And so then you're going to ask kind of this second question here, right? What are some things that you do well? And then what are things that you think others believe that you do well, right? So if you think about that castle wheel again, right? What am I assessing with this kid, right? I'm trying to assess where's their self-esteem, right? Where is their reflection from others, right? Are they understanding how do others actually see kind of some things that they're doing well? Can they give me anything positive at all that they feel like they can do, right? Or not? And then if they're really having a hard time, you can give them some prompts like, are you a good helper? Are you on time? Are you good at drawing? And then what you're doing here is you're going to type in the actual behavior that they said, right? So I'm like really good at, you know, talking to my friends. So we've got Johnny now that we just did the yips and the yaps with on a previous interview with him, right? And we found out that this kid just loves annoying people, right? Loves getting into arguments with people, and he loves cursing out the teachers, but he's not angry according to him, right? So then we ask him, what are you good at? He says, I'm really good at making friends. Do these two things connect, right? I don't know how good you are at making friends if you're arguing with people all the time, right? And you're doing all this stuff, but we're not going to confront him with any of that stuff yet because we're still just kind of gathering our information to see where is little Johnny coming from, right? And then any comments you might put in here, like exactly what he says, right? If he says, you know, I'm really good at making friends. Oh, can you tell me a little bit? How are you good at making friends? Like, what does that actually look like, right? And so you kind of fill this out with like 4 or 5 of them. You can help them to identify specific behaviors that are resulting in problems in the school or classroom, right? Making suggestions, paraphrasing statements can help the student clarify their ideas. And then you should have a list of behaviors that have been nominated by the referring teacher. So kind of ask the referring teacher, like, what are some things that Johnny does good? Like, what are some things that you see that's good in Johnny? Ask mom, what do you see as good in Johnny, right? And kind of see like what they're doing. Because if the kid has, this is something that they've never been asked before. So the kid may not know how to answer this, right? What are your strengths? What are you good at? If someone asked me, what are my strengths? I'd be like, I don't know. I could bench press maybe, I don't know, 40, 50, I don't know, right? I don't know what my strengths are. And it's a weird question, right? And kind of a weird way to ask. So the kid may not get it. So what kind of things are you good at? Like what kind of, and then, you know, your teacher said that you're really good at this. Do you feel like you're good at doing that? Oh yeah, I'm good at that. Why are you good at that, right? And he can kind of tell you. Then you're going to go into define the behaviors of concern. So you're going to ask them, what things are you kind of, that are getting you into trouble or that you're having a problem with, right? We're not going to ask them what things are you not good at, right? Because again, we want to try to word everything in kind of like a strengths base. So if it's a problem that you're having, then problems usually have solutions, right? So then maybe we can come up with a good solution so that that's not a behavior that you're having a problem with anymore, versus you're bad, right? And you're doing the wrong thing and you're just being a bad kid, right? No one wants to be around you because that's not okay, right? So like, for example, are you late to class? Do you talk out in class? Do you not get your work done? Do you get into fights, right? And then you list those behaviors and then kind of the comments that they're talking about there. And then the cool part about this is this next step here, which I made this more complicated than it has to be when I created this form. I'm trying to get you guys to develop like a 5-point Likert scale, because we want to collect data on this student, right, that could be supported to actually show, hey, what we're doing is actually improving this kid's interventions. And so what you're going to ask them is like, okay, on the next page, we have like the daily schedule, but on this page, we're talking about, I just want you to kind of like sit here or whatever, and we're going to use this scale we're going to use a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being your absolute worst day and 5 being your absolute best day. And then I want you to explain to me what it looks like if I saw you from across the room. How would I know that this was the best day ever? So this is a 5-day for you, the absolute best day ever. What does that look like for you, right? What are you kind of doing? How are you feeling? What does, how would I know if I just saw you that this was a 5-day, right? And you get the kid to explain it. So some kids might say on the 5-day, you know what? Hey, you know what? I'm happy. I'm looking good. I got my backpack on. My hair is all brushed. I'm doing things. I had a kiddo that she wasn't mine. She was one of my social workers, but she was a cutter. And so she was saying on a good day, my skin is open, right? I'm wearing short sleeve shirts, right? I'm wearing a skirt on there, whatever, whatnot, because you can actually see skin, right? On a bad day, I'm completely covered up. Like I got long sleeve shirts on, right? I'm not doing nothing. So it gives you, as the person working with this student, kind of a visual of what the kid says themselves that is going to show you that they're having a good day or not, right? So if the kid comes off the bus and their hair is kind of all disheveled, right, and they have their backpack, but it's not on and their head's kind of down, right, when they're getting off the bus, you might know that's a 1 day and you're going to check in with that kid, right? So then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to say, if everything was going perfect, you'd be a 5. Describe to me, what does that day look like for you? And then you're just going to write that down here where it says 5, right, is their best day, whatever kind of keywords and stuff, that they're giving you. And then you do the same thing for a 1, right? Okay, let's say it's your absolute worst day. You're getting off and I see you across the room. How would I know that it's your worst day? Like, what is that going to look like? Well, what if it's kind of an in-between day for you, right? And you're like at a 3-day, right? Kind of in between a 1. Not everyone has a perfect day all the time, and nobody has a horrible day all the time. Most of us are average most of the time, right? So if you have like an average day, what is that kind of like? And then you can go, so if you're not like your absolute best day, but it's better than an average day, it's more of a 4-day, tell me, what does that look like, right? And you kind of help them to operationalize this 5-point Likert scale. Now, the reason I say 5-point Likert scale is because when you're standing there and you're doing duty, right, you're at lunch, you're at bus duty, or you're passing the kid inside the classroom, right, and you can look at the kid and you can be like, 5, thumbs up, a 1, a 3, where are you at, right? This is not going to upset anybody because the kid's not talking and they can tell you I'm a 1. Right? If they tell you I'm a 1, I need to get in touch with that kid right away, right before they kind of like blow up. So you can come back with them. Nope, I'm a 5. You can give them like, yeah, man, you're a 5. Way to go, right? I'm a 4. Good job. Keep it up, right? You can also measure this as when you're kind of coming down with the kiddo and you're talking with the kid. So how's your kid on average? How are you doing today? Like overall day today, what do you think your day was? A 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can log that and easily track that and graph that, right? And I'll show you what that looks like. The next step of this is a little bit more complicated. And the reason I haven't quite used this one, because a lot of people see this and they just kind of freak out. To me, it made a lot of sense, but to them, when they're looking at it, it's kind of freaking out. This one, you can just check it to kind of show like what they're doing. But what I want to show is, okay, so let's look at your whole day, right? Let's kind of see like, where's your whole day when you're coming into school? So before school, on average, where are you at? So like when you wake up in the morning, you're getting ready for school and all that kind of stuff, like where are you at? Is that normally like a 1 to you? Do you sometimes get off? Are you a 5 or a 4? And then when you come here, right, your first period class is, English, right? How are you at English? And then you transition between, English. How are you doing with those transitions? Your next one is math. How do you feel about math, right? Then you transition from math. Then you go to PE. How are you feeling about PE, right? And then you're transitioning from PE. You go to lunch, right? How are you doing at lunch? You kind of transition back in, blah, 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 right? So I'm kind of going through with the kiddo and kind of saying, on that scale that we just created, what does your day look like? Right? And what I want to do on that is say, okay, what does your day look like? Because I'm looking for a pattern, right? So if this kid is doing just fine, like in the morning, afternoon, and then after PE, right, from the rest of the day on, this kid is trash. What's going on in the afternoon that's causing that? And when they go home after school, it's a 1 for them. So I might think, what's going on after school, right? What happened in PE that's getting you? Are you just so riled up after PE because you get PE and then you had recess and lunch? So now you're just like hyped up, right? And you want your day to go. Are you not able to calm yourself down? Like, is it a mood dysregulation kind of a thing? I got to teach you some, stuff. Maybe I got to bring you in right after PE and we do some relaxation skills, or I talk to the PE teacher about, maybe integrating that into his classroom or her classroom, just do some, relaxation skills with the kiddos if you can, before you send them back into class, because it would help, everybody, right? So it really kind of shows you a little bit more in a systems of what's going on with the kid and looking at them globally. Does that make sense? So you see how it's a little bit more than an FBA, right? You're really more digging into trying to find like that undercore of like that one kid of kind of like, what's going on with them, right? So it goes a little bit deeper. And then this is where the FBA kind of connects in together, where you're trying to see what are they doing? Are they trying to escape, get attention, avoid, or something? I'm not really going to go over this one because we'll go over this one later, but I just wanted to show you guys like these first 3 films that we're kind of going over with. Who had their hand up? Jennifer, go ahead.
That student daily schedule totally makes sense. I'm just wondering, if you're looking for a pattern, do you do it several times? Like, when do you do it?
You can do this as often as you want. So every single time that the kid comes in, you could do it. You could do it once a month. You could do it. This is your monitor, right? Your tracking. And what's really cool is that when I can't write on this one, unfortunately, because it like won't let me, but like if I tracked here, right, and I tracked here, and then I came down here, I can actually use this, and I have a graph all of a sudden, right, where it's kind of showing me where the kid is going throughout the day. And then I can compare that from the first day I saw the kid to 3 weeks in, right? Has any of this kind of stuff changed, right? Where's like their graph going? Perfect. And all of this stuff will be on the thing for you guys. So, okay, we can go back to. So any questions on that so far? So see, evidence-based practice is kind of a big thing, right? So it's like kind of a lot of stuff, right, that we end up doing. And then what do we do with all of this stuff? So this is where the data tracking sheet comes in, which I love this data tracking sheet. I think it's like really cool. So the data tracking sheet, whoops, did I skip it? What happened? Oh, there it is. Okay. Who had a question? Megan?
Mm-hmm. I was just wondering, because I know sometimes we do like behavioral surveys asking the teacher, would it be really, would it be also evidence-based if we did like the teacher's tracking like of the student's behavior versus how the student felt, and kind of see if there's like a correlation between the behaviors and the way the student's feeling? And
yep, absolutely. And what I would suggest is that you ask the student, after you have done their 5-point Likert scale, you ask the student, this is so cool what you just did. Can I share this with your teacher and let them know your scale? So that way, if you're having a bad day, you can tell the teacher, and then the teacher can also kind of look and like, help you back, right? So that's going to help with their self-reflection, right? With their relationship building, with their decision making. So then the teacher can also do the same kind of thing, and just, you can give her a scale, and on a 1 to 5, right, she can just track real quick and say, how did Johnny do in English? How did they do in reading? Right? And then, yeah, you can absolutely compare the two of them. You do the same thing, iterative reliability, right? That was perfect. Someone popped that up. I didn't see who it was, but that's exactly right. Right? And the 5-point scale is so easy to do, right? And we can then average it and kind of see like, okay, how is the kid kind of doing, right? What are they working on? So then what I've done is kind of taken this as a data sheet and just kind of plugged it in all together, right? So we said like, when are the dates of this kid? What is this kid doing? So when was their in-house? When was their, suspension and intake during monitoring and at discharge, right? So when I like let them go, how are they doing? How was their attendance? What were their grades like, right? I took percentages here. I've been doing this for years, and I used to just write down the letter grade. And what sucks is some schools do like a 0 F. So before you can even raise your grade from an F, right, you got to get up to like a 60. Right. So now they're kind of doing like, 50% F, like, 50 to 60 might be F or whatever, so forth. Right. Some schools are doing that. So what I started doing was the kid would still have an F, but they were at a 0 when I started with them. And now they're at like, a 50, right, or 48. So they're doing their work now. Right. It's just all those other zeros are messing up their score. Right. So we want to be able to kind of see like, percentage wise, how is this kid actually doing, right? Are they getting up? Are they not going up? And it looks like this kid, this was obviously the perfect child because it's our data sheet to show that the kid is a perfect child, right? Then your yips and your yep score, right? You kind of take their total score. So they were 26 on their, their internalizing score. Externalizing was at a 29. Monitoring about halfway through. I'm taking this to see, how are they doing? And when I decided to kind of terminate with them about 8, 9, 10 weeks later, where are they at that point, right? So you'll notice that their internalizing or externalizing wasn't perfect, right? They were still kind of high here, but it's because 20 or below is, doing pretty good, but it's much better than at a 29, right? So they can monitor kind of for themselves. And I do the same thing with the social, the SABRs, right? So at intake, how's the kid doing, right? The teacher showed a lot. Their total index was, pretty high, and then got better, right? And where are they doing with their social skills got better. Everything kind of got better from the teacher's point of view. And then this is the kid's actual Likert scale. Like, how did the kid kind of start doing when I was working with him kind of, each week, right? As we're kind of going. And so you can kind of see. So if we're moving up this way and all of a sudden we start coming back down here again, right? This is interesting data for me to know to say, hey, what's going on? Right. And kind of like, losing weight, right? We want it to go straight up. It never looks like this, guys, right? This is wishful thinking, right? It's going to be here and then you might be down here and then here and then down. You want to look for the trend line to kind of show it, but I didn't want to scare anybody with stats. So I just wanted to show like, you can see like how the stuff is going. But when you put this into like Excel, if you put these numbers in there and you told it to put a trend line, it'll show you, which way is it kind of going up or down if you can't tell. If we're going up, then we're doing better, right? You can kind of see like the average with where this kid was at, where he was like averaging at like, 1s and 2s, right? And then suddenly he got to a 3, then he kind of came back down again, and then he just got it, right? And kind of skyrocketed up. So this would be a great one then for me to show to move on. Was it Jill or Jennifer? I can't remember which one you guys asked me about what you could show the school psych, right? If you showed the school psych this, what do you think they do? They do backflips, right? As far as I'm concerned, because they never get good data like this. So they would be like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? They might ask you, what intervention did you do at this point, right? What intervention did you do here? Like what, because maybe I changed my intervention here, right? So if I changed my intervention, you could draw like a line right here just to kind of show I changed interventions and we did something else and then we got the ticket, right? Or I've changed my intervention 3 times and the kid's not getting any better. Maybe this is a special education kid and we need to get the school psych looking at this kid, right? And if you could show them this behavior here, they're going to be like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? And so you'll be able to get the kid the help that they need sooner. Any questions on that? No? Kind of cool. I like this one. Do you guys like this page? I like this page. Whoops. I didn't mean to do that. All right, now I don't know what I've done. Let me see if I can get this. Okay, good. Whew, scared the heck out of me. All right, so these are just some evidence-based practice resources that are free that you can go into and kind of look at some of the different stuff that's on here. So when I upload this, these will all be live links. So the very first one is Castle, right? Because I told you about that. So when you go into Castle, it has like school-based mental health, evidence-based practices, all of these kind of things or whatever. They have some really great ways to kind of give you some good ideas of what to do. And they're all free of charge because at the schools, schools stink, right? When we have no money. And a lot of times we have no money. So let me stop presenting. Okay, so that is evidence-based practice. Is that any questions on evidence-based practice? Yes, Jill.
So in thinking about like a school social worker versus the school counselor, is what you just showed exclusive to a school social worker, or is that something that a counselor might do as well?
It's pretty much exclusive to a school social worker, but obviously we haven't trademarked these things. So school counselors can do them too. So if the school counselor, if you don't have a school social worker on your campus and the school counselor, it's going to help the kid, right? So if the school counselor wants to do this, by all means, yes, they could do it for sure.
Okay, I was just wondering because we have a full-time counselor. We don't have a social worker. I'd never seen any of that. And I was just, because you're right about the psychologist. If they got that form, they'd be so happy. If they got anything but anecdotal notes.
Yes, yes. And you can see where it's pretty easy to do, right? Because you're actually showing like where things are going and what's happening and easy to kind of track. So yeah, if your counselor is willing to do it, by all means, show it to your counselor and show them like, this is what we would need to do. It's going to take them a little bit of time to figure it out, especially talking with the kid, because getting that 5-point Likert scale is, ideal for this. But yeah, it works for absolutely anybody. So I would love it if the counselors used it. I think it would be awesome. And then when you do get a social worker one day, you could be like, oh, wow, do this. And they'll be like, what is that? Because I didn't take my class, so they didn't know. But hopefully they know when they get it down pat. Great questions. Anything else, guys? No? Okay. All right. So I had one more. I wanted to stop the one PowerPoint, but I don't know. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. Okay. So I found it. Okay. So the last thing that I kind of wanted to go over with you guys, and then this will end like our thing from last week. So this was, I can do it right from here, and then that's so much easier. So present to meeting. Oh, I see why it's having a hard time. For some reason, it is not seeing this as a Google. Interesting. All right, give me a second, guys. Hold on. I didn't want to, so I want this one, PowerPoint schools. Let me just do your screen and then I can see it. Okay. Okay, so I think that was the one or whatever. Yeah, okay, so we did the evidence-based practice. Then I was going to show you guys the PowerPoint with it. So I did the, okay, we talked about all of that stuff. Okay, and then the evidence-based. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of finish it up with some different types of therapies that you would do in school. And these therapies are usually more therapies that like the social worker might use. That are kind of going on in school, but a school counselor could use them as well. So what we want to do is we want to focus whenever we're working with the student and you're doing some type of therapeutic intervention or mental health intervention with them in school, we want to make sure that we're focusing on the here and now, not on their past, right? Because we don't want to open the kid up and then send them back to class. So schools are academic areas where they are hosting social workers inside of the schools that are doing some of that clinical work with them and doing some of that therapeutic work with them. But we're not there to treat trauma, right? And to treat deep trauma. We're there to do things with social emotional learning that is kind of more solution focused and in the moment type things. If the kid needs more, if they've had like a severe trauma or PTSD or something like that that's kind of happening with them in the past that they really need to talk about, more so than what you can provide them at school, it's really important that we refer them out to an outside therapist and really work with the parent to make sure that they do follow up with that. Because unfortunately, when we get into that, the school-based mental health stuff, I'll talk about how few of the kids actually go for therapeutic interventions outside the school and why the school is actually the least restrictive environment to offer these things to our students. But right now, our schools kind of aren't seeing that. They're getting there, but not quite yet. So we want to be very careful with what we open up with them. Andrea.
So for one of the articles I was looking at for the topic selection, they talked about how a school social worker can provide mental health to decrease barriers and stuff. So how will that work if you're trying to do like both of these things?
So everything I've explained to you so far, good question, Andrea. Everything I've explained to you so far is all mental health services. So in schools will say mental health professionals, right? And when they're saying mental health professionals, they're not thinking clinical, right? Like an LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker, or a marriage and family therapist, or a CPC, right? A certified personal counselor. They're thinking school psychologist, school counselor, school social worker, right? Those are your mental health professionals, because we all focus on the behaviors that the kids are having inside of the school. And we're a primary focus on schools. And what we want to make sure that we're aware of is at a social work level, at a school social work level, you're really focusing on the social emotional learning of the kid and keeping them in kind of like the here and now. So we want to really look at what is impeding on that child's education, and then how can we help to eliminate that. So you may have a kid that has PTSD flashbacks, right? And they're kind of, coming in or whatever, and they're having some horrible things. I had a student one time in a classroom that his father purposely burned him with scalding hot water. And so he was inside a classroom, and it was at a school where Nevada had passed a law saying that first and second grade classrooms could only have like 12 kids in them or something. And so they made these really tiny, tiny classrooms, right, to stuff the kids in there because it made a lot more sense economically, right? And then they had to expand the size of those classrooms because of teacher shortages and school district cuts and that kind of stuff. So now you've got to cram in a 12 room that's built for 12 kids, right? You got to cram 16 kids in there, or 18 kids, or even 20, right? So now you're wall to wall in there. So some kids have no problem with that, right? They come in there and they're like, yeah, so it's a little crowded, it's a little whatever, no big deal. Other kids that have had a severe trauma have issues with it. And this kid had bad issues inside that classroom, right? And it wasn't his fault or the teacher's fault. His father poured scalding hot water on him, and he doesn't like being backed into a corner and feeling like he's trapped. So he spent most of his time underneath the desk in the classroom screaming, right? And it was because of the burns and stuff like that, that he kind of like had that was on there. So when I started working with him, it wasn't my role as the school social worker to bring up the trauma that he felt from dad, right? That's long-term, in-depth. He needs an outside therapist to work with that. My goal was to stop the kid from being underneath the desk and screaming in the classroom, right? So what could I do to help build up his social skills, his social emotional learning, those castle will skills, right? To help this kid so that he felt comfortable enough inside his classroom, build the relationship with his teacher, build the relationship with some of his classmates, so that way we can get the kid so that he could sit and be where he was supposed to do. And so we actually were able to do it pretty quickly with the kid just by kind of rearranging the classroom a little bit, giving him a little more space, and then just actually taping on the floor so that that was his area, and letting the other kids know that's his area. He had a little bit bigger area than the others, but you couldn't cross that area without asking, right? And so he felt some control there, right? Some safety there, some power there, and it stopped him from crawling underneath the desk and just screaming, right? And that was our goal. And so it worked with him. He was like a second grader. But I didn't want to go into all the other kind of stuff with him, right? So in answer to your question, what we do is some cognitive behavioral therapy, right? We want to think, feel, do. So what you're thinking has an effect on what you feel, and that has an effect on what you do. So the best way for me to disrupt that, right, is to get you to think kind of differently. So with this kiddo, this think, feel, do, right, what we did is we got him to think differently about being inside the classroom with all of these kids around him and all of this noise, by giving him a calm, comfortable space where his back was like, he wanted this, his back kind of against the wall, but the desk facing out, and then like, just kind of taped around with duct tape. It was a colorful one, you know what I mean, where that's like his area, and he knew that, the other kids were going to be there, and he was up close by the teacher because that's where he wanted to be, because he felt kind of safer there, right? And it, like I said, it worked. He could see who was coming. And if he felt like something was going on, we kind of made like a little timeout corner. We didn't call it that. I forget what we called it. The teacher had a great name for it. Just kind of like in the corner of the room where we just kind of hung looked like a tent-like looking thing you'd hang over a bed. And you could go in there and he could like calm down and blow little bubbles and stuff like that. He'd set his little timer, calm himself down in there, and then come back out, right? So that's all cognitive behavioral, because we're trying to stop the way he's thinking from freaking out, right? So we can get something else. I just talked about all that. We want to work on kind of thought monitoring for him, right? We're going to really focus on his core beliefs, those negative automatic thoughts, and those incorrect assumptions. So the incorrect assumptions a lot of times are, they're looking at me. Why are they looking at me? They're talking about me. Why are they talking about me, right? And you'll see that a lot in kids with a lot of anxiety, right? And the reason for that is because they've kind of gone through like this trauma. So the way trauma works on the brain. I'm trying to think if I go into this during our trauma lesson. And I think I do. But the way trauma works on the brain it's really impressive, actually, because we have what's called our reptilian brain, right? Which is like where your amygdala is, and it's like your brainstem, right? So it's like the back of your neck. You can kind of feel it, and it runs all the way down at your automatic nerve system. And the reptilian brain, they call it that because all reptiles have this portion of the brain. It's your automatic nervous system. It basically tells your heart to beat. It tells your lungs to breathe. It tells you you're hungry, right? So it basically says, can I eat it? Is it going to eat me? Or can I mate with it, right? That's what your reptilian brain says. So when you think of like a little lizard that just hatches out of its egg, right, and it digs itself out of the dirt, it immediately runs for cover, right? Because that lizard automatically knows if I don't run for cover, something is going to come and eat me. The world is scary. The world is not a safe place, and I got to get underneath the quickest bush or something is going to come and kill me. It doesn't even know what. It just hatched. Has no idea even what an eagle looks like, right? Or what, some animal that would come and eat the lizard. I don't know what else would, but something, right? Some other bird. Has no idea even what that looks like, right? Yet it knows as soon as I'm bored, I got to run for cover. So when you have a kid that's in trauma, it's that part of their brain that is doing this, which is what I call wigging out, right? And all they know is that something is going to hurt them. They don't know what, but something is coming and it is going to hurt them. And I need to run for cover. And in this kid's case, he literally ran for cover underneath the desk, right? So that's like the anxiety and the stuff that were coming on from there. So his incorrect assumptions there was that this classroom is not safe. I'm not safe here because there's so many people here. There's people coming up behind me. There's people coming up every which way. And there's no place for me to be that safe except for underneath my desk. And so we kind of worked on with that trauma to get him to stop kind of wigging out. I said, we built the relationship with the teacher. That's the next part of your brain. It's your mammalian brain, right? Or the cortex part of your brain. And what that part of the brain says is it starts building relationships, right? So it's your mammalian brain. And that part of the brain, if you look at mammals, dogs have it, monkeys have it, squirrels have it, right? Any kind of like, warm blood, I was going to say warm-blooded animals. I don't know if a shark has it. I think a shark has all this. I honestly don't know. It was just Shark Week, so that's why I went to sharks. But dolphins would have it, right? Where it's building that relationship and it's saying, okay, so you know what? If I'm wigging out like this, how do I know what to do? Let's see if we were like all in like a big classroom together, right? And all of a sudden a huge bear came, walking through the door, right? But it was wearing a tutu, right? And it was on its hind legs and it kind of came walking in. We would all kind of look at that. We would feel this, right? Wig out. What the heck? What am I going to do? Where am I going? And we would start looking at one another because why on earth did a bear just walk in here in a tutu? Like, is it a trained bear? Is it going to kill me bear? Like, why is this? What is going on? So you start looking at other people for their reaction, right? And if one person were to freak out and get up and scream, the rest of us are going to scream and maybe get up, right? If they ran out of the room, right, we may do the same thing, but we're kind of looking to see what are other people kind of like around us kind of doing, right? We're looking for, that's our relationship. This right here, if you think about a newborn baby is all their reptilian brain, right? I'm crying, I'm screaming. There's nothing I can do for myself. I'm never going to be more vulnerable than when I'm a newborn baby. Right? So I'm crying and I'm screaming and here comes mom or my dad or a caregiver. And that's the relationship piece of it that calms me and lets me know I'm okay and I'm safe. Right? So that's where the relationship piece of your brain comes in. You can't deal with a kid when a kid is like this, right? When a kid is in a reptilian brain and all they're doing is running or hiding or fighting, right? They're freaking out. You need to engage them as a relationship piece so that they understand that you're someone that's there that can kind of help and protect them, right? That's their relationship brain. Because the part of the brain that we want to get to is this part, which is the prefrontal cortex, which is up here, right? The prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop till you're like 25, 26 years old, right? But if my prefrontal cortex has disengaged, right? My mammalian brain has disengaged. I don't have relationships and all I'm doing is this. I don't have the ability then to have executive functioning. I can't talk. I'm not thinking, right? I can't engage with you. Because I'm just doing this, I just want out, right? So this kid right here is not learning. So we need to get the relationship between the teacher and the student. That's why that relationship is so important, right? So that the kid can say, okay, I'm safe in here. Teacher's going to keep me safe. I'm going to freak out every once in a while, but I know she's going to, get me safe or whatever, right? Kind of come back in. Then that way she can re-engage this executive functioning or he can re-engage executive functioning. And the kid is actually then ready, willing, and able to learn. Right. And that's kind of the things that we're really working on when we're looking at cognitive behaviors is we're saying we want to look at that thought process, right? And we place those with these negative beliefs, with these new cognitive skills, the more positive self-talk, thinking of consequences and learning how to problem solve them, right? And then we want to activate that process, which is then going to help the student to identify his or her feelings, identify that time or place of the activities that invoke those negative feelings, right? And then teach the relaxation, the guided imagery, the breathing exercises to help them manage emotions. So remember I said, if he's coming back in, right, and we notice on his chart that after PE, right, they're just having a really hard time calming down and coming back in, we could go then to the PE teacher and explain, hey, they're really having a hard time. The kids are like really wigging out. They're really hyped up, right, when they're coming back from PE. Do you mind doing just like, a 5-minute relaxation thing? I can come in a couple times and teach you if you don't know. and just do it with your whole class. So that way, when we go back into the classroom, we're calm. And then you can go back to the teacher and you can tell the teacher, you know what, when they're coming back in from PE teacher is going to do this. Let's do it again when they hit back into your classroom, and do another 5 minutes of just kind of relaxation and calm down, right? Turn the lights down, play some music, teach them those kind of things, right? To get them kind of calming down. That's all part of CBT. Does that make sense? Yes, Jill. Jennifer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you ever find that it can be a slippery slope? Like if you have a kid that's experienced trauma and then they're getting comfortable with you and want to open up to you, but you can't really go down like the TFCBT route.
Yes.
Does that happen? Okay.
Yeah, it can absolutely happen with the kiddo. And that's where you have to kind of like you're not going to want to shut the kid down because they need to talk, right? And they need someone to talk it out with. But you might try to like get them to where, you know, they're coming like before they go home, and then maybe talk to the parent about it and see if it's okay. But you also have to make sure it's within your scope of practice. So if you're not a clinician, right, it's not something that necessarily you should do, but it's beautiful that the kid wants to share that with you, and you can share it with them just because you're building that relationship, right? So you're getting them to understand to stop this, and you're someone that they can trust, and they can actually say, hey, this is like what's going on. And you can just listen to them and be empathetic, right? I'm sorry that happened to you. That I'm so honored that you shared that with me. Thank you. Right? So you don't have to do necessarily a therapeutic process with them, but if they need to have that, we call it an emotional vomit, and it just comes out and there's nothing you can do to stop it, then you just need to be there with the kid, let them, you know, do that, and, you know, get them, you know, calm down or whatever. Usually once they've talked it out to somebody, you feel so much better. I mean, think about it when it, you know, happened to you too, right? Oh my God, it was this horrible thing, and I actually shared it with you, and I feel so much better now. So then when they come back in the next day, hey, how you feeling today? How you doing? Where are you? You were 5, you were 4, you were 1. How you doing? Back to class or whatever. Good job. High five. Blah, 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 right? And then just continue the relationship. So it doesn't feel weird for them, right? Because I've had times when I was a kid where I would emotionally open up to someone, and then I felt weird afterwards because I'd be like, oh my God, now what do I say? How do I talk to this person? What do I do? Right? Kind of went on from that. So then after we do the feeling, right, the affect process, they talk about the behavioral process, which this is where you might role play with the kid, rehearse for difficult situations, how to react more appropriately, right, in those type of situations. And this is where we want to be real careful, because what ends up happening is if we don't really get into this thought process and into this affective process, right, if they're wigging out like this, and then we're teaching them, right, with the relationship or whatever, how to kind of think differently. This is, now we're really trying to engage this upper executive thinking, right? If the kid is downshifted and they're wigging out and they react, right, and then they've like attacked the teacher, they've thrown a chair, they've ripped up all their paperwork, whatever it is, you know, that the kid has done. I had a kid one time that was so angry with the girl in front of him, he literally took his scissors and cut off all her hair. And when you asked him, why'd you do it? He goes, I don't know. Which angers you because you're like, don't tell me you don't know. You know what? You picked up scissors. You had to do this. You picked up scissors and you went like this. That took thought. Why would you do that? I don't know. I just wanted to hurt her. She hurt me. I don't know. But what you got to remember is that for a kid that's had a trauma, right, if they're wigging out, they really don't know, or they may not even remember that they've done it. Right? They've been so angry, whatever, they just kind of go black, right? You may have a kid that just loses it inside a classroom, and then after they calm down, they just fall asleep because they're so exhausted because all that emotional release, right, that kind of happened. So they may not know. So we want to make sure that they're connecting how they're feeling and wigging out with the relationship piece of it, right? The executive functioning that's coming back online with it to their behaviors. So when they tell you, I don't know why, like, what should you have done? Everyone's seen this kid. What did you do? I got mad. I yelled at the teacher. I threw the book and I ran out of the classroom. What should you have done? I should have taken a deep breath. I should have counted to 10. I should have, gone to the timeout corner. I should have done, they can all tell you what they should have done. Well, then why didn't you do that? I don't know, right? Because they don't know, because they're not connecting, right? They're still here. So we're asking them to do internal locus of control when they're not there yet. Right? We need the teacher to be able to understand how to disengage with that kid, how to get the kid to start doing the other steps that they're supposed to be doing, right? So that way the kid can have some success and be able to make it through. So that's where the teacher might go, oh, I don't know, Johnny, are you a 1? Where are you at right now? You look like you're a 1, maybe you're a 2, right? Look at me, right? Just telling the kid to look at you is going to be like an engagement, right? If you can get them to look at you and go, you know what, good, look at me. Just breathe with me, right? Don't even tell, no, look at me. Good, look at me, right? If they have some type of a reward system, whatever, you can do that. That's all part of cognitive behavioral to get them to start connecting. So that way they can recognize when I'm getting here and how to re-engage themselves, right? Very difficult thing to get the little kids to do. And then I just talked about the positive reinforcement, right, that we're going to do with them, telling them, good, look at me. It's a good job. I saw how hard you tried. And know, too, that they're going to freak out. One of the things is a pet peeve that I have, when you work so hard with the kid has tried so hard, the kid does really good for a week, and then they come in on the Monday or whatever, or maybe the Tuesday, and they just completely lose it. And now the whole school's freaking out, and they want to kick the kid out. And, they're mad as hell, and the teacher, and it's like, how often have you tried to make change in your life, and you did really good the first week, and the next week was hell? Like, it was like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? Like, you ever start a workout routine or, do anything, right? Oh, I'm going to cut out television, right? Or whatever it is. And you do really good that first week. And then the next week you're like, oh my God, that's how we work, right? It steps forward and back, and the kid is going to kind of do the same thing. So they're a new kid, and it's going to take some time. So I get holding them accountable, but I also don't get holding them accountable like that, because like they made a good change. They never made it through a week before being good, right? And now they completely freaked out. So when you're talking with the teachers, make sure you're setting them up for this, right? And let them know, okay, you know what he did? How did he do? He did really good. Okay, tomorrow's a new day. They may step back, right? Be prepared for that. It doesn't mean that we've lost all ground, right? It's not all, it's just that they kind of stepped back some. So you want to make sure we're good for that. You want to make sure that you're rewarding positively for appropriate behaviors. That's really the key to CBT. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like a tangible award, right? Like I don't have to give you money or tickets or stickers or stars, because you'll notice kids will do it so long for stickers and stars, and then they don't want those stickers and stars anymore, right? And again, the reason is because they need the external locus of control, and we're asking them to do it internally. And now they're like, this is bored. I don't want to do this for stickers and stars anymore. Andrea.
So with that, is there something that like they would only do it for positive reinforcement, even if it's not stickers and stars, that they won't? Do you hit a point where they won't do it unless they get a reward? Is that something to be mindful of?
Well, yeah, and that's how they start manipulating CBT, right? When you start doing like a positive, negative reinforcement kind of thing like that or whatever. So what you have to do is kind of wean them off of that. And you start telling them, you know what? So you know what? You're going to get stickers and stars or whatever, but you're going to get a high five. You're going to get a call home to mom. You're going to get me just saying, wow, great job. I am so proud that you did that, right? Kind of walk you through what it is that's going on with them. If a kid looks at you and says, I'm not doing it unless I get a sticker or a star, then they're being manipulative, and you tell them, you don't tell me when you get a sticker or a star. That's not how this works. Good try, right? And try to make it a joke. Like, if you can get them to laugh or whatever and be like, oh, okay, right? They'll be like, okay with it. I remember working in an SEC classroom, and I had this middle schoolers. They're really hard middle schoolers in a self-contained classroom. And he was like, well, I'm not doing nothing until you give me $1. And I go, well, you know what? You're not going to do nothing then, because I'm not giving you $1, because that's not how it works. You don't go to your boss and tell your boss when to pay you. What the heck are you thinking here, right? And the kid just kind of laughed. And because of my reaction to it, right, because he was pretty nasty in his tone, right? But my reaction to him back kind of like set him back a little bit. And then we just kind of move forward. And, sometimes you just got to ignore what they say and just keep going, right? And you also have to look at the kid and say, okay, why are you asking for the award? Am I not catching you being good enough? Right? Is the teacher not giving you that good ratio of positive to negative reinforcement? Right? So therefore you're asking for a reward because you're really trying hard, and nobody's noticing how hard it is that you're trying, right? So then you're asking for the reward. So you could turn it with that too and go, wow, you want your reward. You must really be working hard and trying. I'm sorry I didn't notice that beforehand, man. High five, keep up the good work, right? And reinforce them in that way. So we have to kind of think, and it's hard because we got 20 million things we're thinking about, especially a teacher inside the classroom. I tell them all the time, I could never do their job. Ever do their job. Like, I'm so happy when I get to come in, do my little push-in lesson, and I get to leave, and she's stuck there with all these people, right? I get to leave, right? But she doesn't. And she's got to teach, and she's got to watch this one because they need something special, and they need this one that needs something special. It's exhausting. I mean, I would walk out of there with drool coming down my face. There's just no way. I mean that sincerely. Like, it would be really hard to teach all the time. So yeah, but they can, when they start asking for the reward, it's usually because they're either manipulating, right? And you have to kind of figure out what's going on with them, or you're not catching them being good enough, right? You're not catching them at enough frequency or whatever. They're trying really hard. They raised their hand. They answered the question. They didn't get a star. What? Wait, that was our deal, right? So then you might say, you know what? So you're right. That was our deal, right? You should have got a star at the end. So now, because what we'll try to do is we'll change it up on them, right? We try to do random, but we didn't tell the kid that. So then the kid thinks, well, this is a bunch of BS. You said you were going to give me stickers, and now you're not giving me stickers, and now I get them like every 3 times. Like, who came up with this plan? This sucks. We didn't agree to this, right? So you got to tell the kid that. You have been doing such a great job. You know what? Now what we're going to do is every 3 times you do it, or I'm going to randomly kind of do it, or we're going to like, let's make it a game and see how many times can you do it, and I'll catch you, and then I'll give you your star, right? So you got to put it back in the framework for the kid and let the kid kind of know what's going on too. Does that make sense? Great question. Okay, another one that we do a lot of time is the solution-focused speech therapy. I love this one inside of the schools. This is based on positive mental health. You ask them to do the things that, you know, they would like to be. It's basically when you're doing solution. So this is where they'll talk about like the miracle question, right? And they'll say, so if you woke up tomorrow and the world was absolutely perfect, what would it be like, right? I hate that question. I think it's stupid because you're never going to wake up tomorrow and have the world be like what it is that, you know, that you actually wanted. But you can ask them, what would you rather have different? What kind of things would you rather have different inside of your life? You know, what other things are you kind of working on doing? There's a social worker was working with this kid who was a reactive attachment disorder student, and in like his 5th foster care placement. And this foster care family just like wanted him gone. And so she was like kind of like working on him, and she was trying to do solution focused therapy with him, but she was so stuck on, because she didn't do a good assessment to figure out where was he on the castle wheel. So she thought he really needed self-awareness. The kid had amazing self-awareness skills, but he didn't have a horrible problem decision-making and horrible self-reflection, right? So when she changed that up and started using this with him, suddenly things started getting better for him because she was actually kind of working on what was going on with him. So you want to build solutions, but you want to help them to come up with the solutions to the problems, right? You don't want to tell them like, wow, you got really upset because you didn't get your sticker at that time. What can we do next time so that, you know, you don't get so upset with that, right? What's kind of happening or whatever. So you ask them, what do they want to feel different, and how would they go about achieving that goal? So, you know what, if you could do this without stickers, how would you do this without stickers? What would that look like, right? How would you go about kind of doing that goal? Doesn't mean that they're doing a good job with it, but, you know, you try to work on it or whatever. And then you're going to ask them how they proceed, right? And keeping those changes in place. So once you start seeing the changes on them and they're doing like really well and they're not earning as many stickers anymore because they're doing it like all the time, they kind of feel like something's missing, right? Because I was doing all of this and I had all these stickers and now you're taking it away from me. And you know why? So you should let them know ahead of time that the goal is that one day you won't need stickers. That's our goal. Right? And when you know you've reached that goal, then you know you're doing really good. So, you know, the less time I give you stickers, the better it is, right? And just reframe it for them so that they're understanding that. They have the miracle question, right? If you asked up tomorrow, what would your ideal life work like? I just told you I hate that question. And then ask if change is happening, what the student has done to create that change. That's this question I love a lot, right? So you're not getting as many stickers. Why do you think that is? Well, my teacher's just mean, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe you're doing better behaviorally. Right? Maybe that's why you're not getting so many of them. So what have you done and how can we keep that going? Right? And then you want to figure out, you know, what they do to have that change continue, right? Which is what I just kind of talked about. How can we keep making sure that we keep doing that? And then you want to make sure you're monitoring with them. And then just like the student can, what you really want is the difference between like the CBT. I feel like the CBT sometimes falls short of connecting what solution-focused based therapy can connect for them, right? Which is why I want to kind of keep doing it and keep working for it and kind of knowing what's going on or whatever, right? And then this has the scaling question. They always say 1 to 10. I like 1 to 5, which that Likert scale that I showed you guys was CBT, right? Just in case you were wondering. And then your coping questions. How has the student coped so far with this problem, right? What has worked for you so far? Like this is where you're building on their strengths, right? How have you been able to deal with this all this time? Right. I mean, you know, you got splashed with your father and now all of a sudden, you know, this is, you know, where you just can't handle with it. What were you doing before? How did you handle it before? You're really strong. What did you do? How can we kind of get that going now? And then the social worker gives a student that positive message. They have a lot of homework. Keep up the good work, right? You want to make sure. So it's kind of the focus for that one. And then we already talked about the needs assessments. They have the mental health crisis flow chart that CCSD has and any suicide protocols that you guys might do. I'm not going to go over those. And that's it. So, all right, that brought us up to this week, which is going to be all the other stuff that we're doing for, what do you call? Special education, No Child Left Behind, MTSS, all that good stuff, right? That we're going to kind of like learn about and go through or whatever. So I think you guys are going to have a good time with that as we work with it. Well, you know what? I think my problem was hold on a second, guys. I think I realized why it's saying that it's published when it's not published, because I think I'm not in summer. I was in the fall. Let me see this now. So I published it for fall, but did I publish it for you guys? Skills deficit, choice behavior. It says it's published. Interesting. All right. I'll still figure it out and figure out why it's not letting you guys do anything with it. And if I can't get it figured out, like I said, we'll just talk about it on Thursday. All right. So that's it. It's 6 o'clock. Yay. So any questions you guys have? Everyone's tired. Like, oh, I get tired too after this. I have to get like water or something. So great job. I hope you guys now understand a little bit more about evidence-based practice in school social work and got some great ideas of what you might be able to do inside the schools. I will look at all of your stuff and grade them all out tomorrow for you, so that way you know that your research questions that you guys, your topics that you picked are okay, no problem. And then if you have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, you guys stay safe out there. Wear your masks. Get your vaccines, all that good stuff. And I will see you guys in 2 days. Bye, everyone.